The room went silent but for the small, awful sound of Onichi's head striking the floor. For one beat the world forgot to breathe. Messi dropped the basin in her hands, water and soap fanning across the tiled floor, and ran. Her legs felt like they might give way. "Onichi!" she screamed, the sound cracking the way grief cracks a thin shell. Neighbors came pouring out. Mama Jiru, Lucy, even the two women from the evening class who'd begun to gossip fondly about Messi's plans. Somebody slapped the bottoms of their palms to their mouths. Somebody shoved Mike aside. Mike, who had been ready to show his iron, found his hands suddenly small. The look he gave his daughter then was not the puffed chest of the man who owned the streets. It was a man stunned by what his own hands had done. For a hollow instant pride and culpability fought in his face. He bent down clumsily, as if afraid Onichi might break, and lifted her limp body. She was still breathing, but her eyelids fluttered like dried petals. Messi's whole world narrowed to the child in her arms. They rushed to the clinic, Lucy and Mama Jiru insisting, refusing to let Mike argue about money or pride. In the cramped examination room a nurse checked Onichi's pupils, felt for a pulse, ordered them to keep her still. The doctor spoke softly of concussion and observation. He wrapped a filthy strip of cloth for the swelling and told Messi to keep the child in bed, awake, for the next 24 hours. Mike sat in the waiting room like a man cooling down from fever, his jaw working. Every puff of his chest seemed suddenly ridiculous, every boast a brittle thing that had just shattered. That night, when Onichi slept fitfully and Messi kept watch with an oil lamp and a book she could not read without remembering the line of the doctor's mouth, something inside Messi changed. The fear that had been soft and patient, the part of her that had swallowed humiliation each day for the sake of peace, hardened into a new kind of resolve. She had watched her daughter fall because a man who believed himself a ruler thought discipline meant breaking spirits. She saw how quickly a home could become a place that taught cruelty. She thought of the evening classes Lucy had described, of the little promises of a life that could be hers and not only the kitchen's. She thought very clearly that if she learned enough, if she spoke louder than Mike's selfishness, then perhaps Onichi would never have to bow to a man's fists. In the days that followed, the estate was loud with gossip. Some called Mike a beast, others, who had eaten at his boasting, tooted and pretended nothing had changed. Mike tried to repair the damage his pride had done with clumsy gestures, buying a new set of plates, bringing home sweets for the girls, muttering apologies that never quite reached his eyes. Onichi's face, swollen and bruised, did not soften. She would sit by the window and spit small, ruinously clever remarks at her father that made even Mike's friends laugh because they were true and too cutting. "Papa," she'd say in that audacious little voice, "did you hit your head and forget that we are not the same as your parrot?" Mike would flush with anger, then with shame. He would try to strike back with words and find that Onichi's knowing stare stopped him. Messi began the evening classes the very week Onichi was allowed to return to school. She went after sending the girls to class, slipping into the community hall under the pretense of buying yams from the market. Lucy's cousin, the woman who taught adult literacy, took Messi under her wing. She taught her how to hold a pen properly, how to sound a word out loud, how an English sentence could be shaped and sent into the world with dignity. Messi learned fast because she had been teaching in her head for years. The lessons were like tending a garden that had been waiting to grow. She paid the small fee by trimming the money she would otherwise add to the grocery bag and by taking on small tutoring for neighborhood children in the afternoons. Word spread quietly that Messi had started to go out in the evenings. Mike tried once to forbid her, and Onichi exploded. "You cannot keep my mother from doing anything," she declared, fiercer than any child in the neighborhood had a right to be. That single, sharp outcry, part Mike's voice, part Messi's hope, forced him back. He grumbled and coughed excuses, but he did not beat Messi again about the matter. Pride in him had learned a new fear, the fearful idea that the women around him were no longer only his reflections. As Messi's confidence grew, so did her plans. She learned how to teach little children to read, how to hold their small hands so they would not be afraid of letters, and she started, quietly, to take on a few pupils at home, a little class after her own girls were in bed. It began as a way to earn money, but it quickly became something else, a way to teach the kind of respect she had never been allowed, to show Onichi and Aduri that a woman's voice could open doors. Onichi watched her mother with a new light in her eyes, not only the sharpness she had inherited from Mike, but also a growing admiration. Mike's friends noticed the change, too. Where once they had cheered him for his brashness, some now lowered their voices and looked at him sideways. Boasts don't hide things forever. Everyone in the compound had a private ledger, and Mike's reputation began to wobble. He, for his part, started to understand that beating down someone's spirit can rebound. He found himself alone, sometimes, listening to Onichi sleep and feeling the old bravado as empty as a used sack. He could not apologize in the way the world expected. His mouth had been trained for bluster, but the tremor in his silence was an apology of its own. The story did not snap into neat lines. There were nights of old arguments, and there were setbacks, money strain, a feint of relapse into bitter words. But the great, steady movement had begun. Messy learning, Onichi refusing to be small, and a family that would, whether by force or grace, be remade. And in one moment of private humility, when Mike found himself outside the little classroom watching his wife teach a tiny child to say, "cat," and then clap when the pupil pronounced it right, something in him shifted more than any apology could say. He sat on the low wall, chin in hand, and for the first time in years he listened without needing to answer. Onichi, who had always carried both her father's sharpness and her mother's brave hope, leaned up on the windowsill and watched her mother teach. She lifted her head and called softly, "Mama, when you finish, will you teach me too? I want to learn how to say more than good morning, so that people will know I am not only your daughter. I am also my own person." Messy looked up, tears thin at the corners of her eyes, and nodded. In that simple exchange the house breathed differently, not healed, not whole, but on a new path. And somewhere beyond the small yard where they lived, Mama Jiru muttered to Lucy, "That woman will make a school yet." Lucy laughed, but her eyes said she believed it. The small seed had been planted. That night, after Messy finished her little lesson with the neighborhood children, she sat quietly on the veranda. The air of Lagos was noisy as always. Hawkers shouting, the hum of generators, the hiss of frying akara down the street. But her mind was calm, almost too calm. She watched Onichi and Aduri chasing each other with a broken plastic plate, laughing like their laughter could heal the bruises of the past. Her heart swelled with pride and with fear. Pride that her girls had such boldness in them. Fear that if she did not keep walking forward, they would grow into the same change she had endured. Mike came out then, his shirt halfway unbuttoned, holding his bottle of beer. For a long while, he just stood there. No boasting, no talking about his friends or about the male child he thought the world owed him. Just silence. Messy kept her eyes forward, refusing to break it. Finally he spoke, his voice lower than usual, almost uncertain. "Messy," he said, "I saw you teaching those children today." She stiffened, ready for another quarrel. But he didn't shout. He only scratched his head and added, You look happy doing it." Messy turned to him, narrowing her eyes. "Yes, Mike, I am happy. Happier than I've been in years. Why are you telling me this?" He shifted, awkward. His pride wrestled with something new inside him, something softer. Because maybe happiness is not only food on the table. Maybe it is also this thing you're doing. Teaching. Messy stared at him, stunned. She almost laughed, thinking he was mocking her. But then she noticed, Mike wasn't laughing. His eyes were heavy, his shoulders bent as if carrying the weight of shame. For the first time in their marriage, Messy saw not the man who owned the street, but a boy raised in the wrong way, repeating a cycle he didn't know how to break. She said nothing. Instead, she turned back to her daughters. But inside her heart, she knew something was shifting. Weeks passed, and Messi continued her evening classes. She learned quickly, always staying up late, writing letters on paper until her fingers cramped. Sometimes, she would whisper lessons aloud while cooking, and Aduri would giggle, repeating after her. Even Onichi began sitting by her side, pretending she too was in class. Then one evening, Lucy brought news again. Messi, guess what? There is a small exam coming up, a test for adults to qualify for proper evening school. If you pass it, you'll be allowed to join a program that prepares people for WAEC. Messi's heart leaped. Me? Take exam? Yes, you, Lucy smiled. You've been learning, haven't you? Why not? Messi hesitated. Fear wrapped around her chest. What if I fail? People will laugh at me. Mike will say, "Didn't I tell you?" Lucy reached for her hand. Messi, listen. Even if you fail, at least you tried. That is already more than many women ever do. And if you pass, you will open a door that no one, not even Mike, can close. That night, Messi could not sleep again. But this time it was not because of fear, it was because of possibility. She sat at the table with her books spread out, lamp burning low. And in her heart she whispered a prayer. Lord, let me pass. Not for me alone, but for my daughters, so they will know they are not small. In the next room, Mike lay awake too. He listened to the scratching of her pen and the soft murmur of her voice as she studied. And though he would never admit it aloud, a strange thought crossed his mind. Maybe my daughters will be more than me. Maybe that is not a bad thing. He turned on his side, facing the wall, and for once he did not curse the sound of her learning. The day of the exam came. Messi dressed simply, but her hands shook as she held her pen. She remembered Mama Jiru's mocking words months ago, "Don't be a slave to that man." And she thought today, "I am breaking those chains." She wrote, she read, she answered, her heart pounding like a drum. When the results came a week later, Lucy ran to her with tears in her eyes. "Messi!" she shouted from the street. "You passed. You passed." Messi froze. "Lucy, stop joking." "I am not joking." Lucy held the paper high. "Your name is here." Messi Mike passed. Messi dropped to her knees right there on the dusty street, covering her face as tears poured down. The children in the street gathered around, clapping without understanding. And from the corner, Onichi shouted, "Mama the teacher! Mama the teacher!" Messi laughed through her tears, her heart bursting. She had taken the first step into the life she always dreamed of. And inside the house, Mike watched from the doorway. He said nothing, but he did not frown. Instead, he whispered under his breath, almost as if talking to himself, "Messi the teacher." For the first time in his life, the words did not taste bitter in his mouth. Messi's success in that first exam spread through the neighborhood faster than smoke from Mama Jiru's cooking fire. Some women whispered in admiration, others in envy, and a few in disbelief. Messi, that soft-spoken housewife who only knew how to wash and cook for her husband? She passed exam? Even Mama Jiru, who once mocked her, now called her Madam Teacher each time she passed. At first it sounded like sarcasm, but slowly it became respect. Messi herself walked differently now. Her back was straighter, her eyes brighter. She would rise early, cook and prepare the girls for school, then disappear in the evenings for her own classes. Onichi was her #1 cheerleader, always clapping her hands and shouting, "Mama the teacher!" Aduri, younger but eager, would bring her books and pens, pretending she too was helping her mother study. Mike, however, wrestled with storms inside him. He would sit among his friends, ready to boast as usual, but when their talk turned to women, to male children and a woman's place, he suddenly found himself quiet. Because what could he say? That his wife, whom he once mocked, had passed an exam? That she was now being called Madam Teacher on the street? He said nothing, only sipped his drink, his mind far away. One evening, Messi returned from class, tired but happy, only to meet Mike sitting in the dark, waiting. She froze at the doorway. "Where are you always going every night?" he asked, voice calm but edged with something sharp. Messi swallowed, her heart pounding. "Mike, you know already. Evening class. I told you." He leaned forward, eyes glinting. "Evening class, or evening men?" The words hit Messi like a slap. She staggered, then steadied herself. For a moment, the old Messi would have begged, explained, pleaded. But the new Messi straightened her shoulders. "Mike," she said firmly, "I will not stand here and let you insult me. You know exactly where I go. If you doubt me, come with me one day. Sit in the class. See for yourself. But if your pride will not allow you, then don't try to use lies to bring me down." Mike blinked. He had expected tears, maybe an apology. But Messi's voice was steady, her eyes blazing. For the first time, he felt the weight of a woman who knew her worth. He said nothing, just leaned back and muttered, "Do what you like," though inside, shame coiled in his chest. Weeks later, Messi's teacher at the evening school noticed her progress. One day after class, she called her aside. "Messi," she said warmly, "you have a gift. Not only do you learn fast, but you explain to others so clearly. Have you ever thought about helping us teach the beginners group?" Messi gasped. "Me? Teach? But I am still learning." The teacher smiled. "Yes, but sometimes the best teacher is one who knows the struggle of learning. Think about it." Messi went home that night, her mind racing. She sat with her daughters, telling them softly, "Mama might start teaching in the evening class." Onichi jumped up, clapping. "I said it, Mama the teacher. One day, you will even build a school." Messi laughed, hugging her tightly. But inside, her daughter's words planted a seed she could no longer ignore. Mike noticed the changes too. Messi now had a small income from helping the evening class with beginners. She used it to buy books for her daughters, to repair their torn sandals, even to add a little extra meat in the soup. The girls adored her more than ever. And Mike, well, he was caught in a storm. Sometimes pride pushed him to bark, "Since when did you become the man of this house?" But other times, when he saw how happy the girls were, how their faces shone when they showed him the new words Mama taught them, something inside him softened. He found himself caught between the old Mike, the man who thought women were only for kitchen and children, and a new Mike who secretly admired his wife's courage. One night, after everyone was asleep, Mike lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He remembered his own childhood, his sisters bent over basins, his mother never sitting down except to serve his father food. He remembered how he had been pampered, spoiled, told he was a prince. And now, he wondered, what if they were wrong? What if I have been wrong all along? But the words stuck in his throat. Admitting such a thing felt heavier than lifting a mountain. The turning point came the day Onichi returned from school with her notebook full of red marks. She dropped it on the table and said, "Mama, the teacher in school doesn't explain well. I don't understand." Messi pulled her close, opened the book, and began to teach her right there at the table. Within minutes, Onichi's eyes lit up. "Ah, Mama, I understand now." Mike, watching quietly from the doorway, saw his daughter's joy, his wife's patience, and he felt something break open inside him. For the first time, he did not feel threatened. He felt proud. Proud that his wife, the woman he once tried to cage, was the very one lifting his children higher than he ever could. He didn't say it aloud, not yet, but in his heart a new respect began to grow. And Messi. She had no idea that her quiet fire was slowly reshaping not only her own life, but the entire family's future. The little moment with Onichi's homework became a whisper in the compound. Soon, neighbors started sending their children in the evenings. At first, just one or two. Auntie Messi, help him with reading, please. Then 3, then 5, until her veranda filled with small bodies, dusty feet, and eager voices chanting ABC under the glow of her kerosene lamp. Messi didn't plan it. She only wanted to help. But word spread quickly. Messi knows how to teach. Messi is patient. Messi does not flog or shout. She explains until the child understands. Mothers who once mocked her now greeted her with respect, their eyes shining with gratitude when their children came home spelling words correctly. One evening, after the children left, Mike sat watching her quietly. She was collecting the scattered slates and chalk, humming to herself. He cleared his throat. So this is how you want to start school in my house? Messi froze, waiting for the usual mockery. But when she turned, his face was unreadable. Yes, Mike, she said softly. If God allows it, this is how I will start. He studied her for a long while, then muttered, Just don't disgrace me. He stood up and walked inside. But Messi smiled. That was not rejection. That was permission in disguise. A few weeks later, Lucy came with news again. Messi. There's a government program. They're looking for women like you, women teaching small groups, to support them with materials. If you apply, they'll give you books and slates. Messi's hands shook. Government? Support me? But I am not a real teacher. Lucy held her chin up. You are real. Don't you see? You've already started. Messi prayed that night with tears in her eyes. She saw in her mind a small school with wooden benches, children singing morning songs, girls and boys learning side by side. And she whispered, Lord, if you give me this, I will not waste it. But every step forward came with new storms. When Mike's brothers visited and saw the crowd of children on the veranda, they scoffed. Mike, you are turning your house into Market Square. Since when did your wife become headmistress? Control her before she disgraces you. Their words stung him, pressing against his old pride. That evening, he sat in silence, nursing a bottle, anger boiling inside. But then, Onichi came running with her school report. She had climbed from the bottom of her class to the top 5. She hugged her father, beaming. Papa, Mama taught me. See, I am first in spelling now. Mike's eyes softened despite himself. He looked at Messi, who stood in the corner quietly, and something inside him shifted again. His brothers' voices faded. His daughter's joy was louder. Still, the war raged within him, between pride and love, between old beliefs and new truth. One night, Messi found him sitting outside, staring at the street. She almost walked past, but he spoke without looking at her. Messi, do you think this thing you're doing can really last? This small teaching of yours. She sat beside him. For a moment she was silent, then said gently, Mike, a tree starts from a seed. Today it is small, tomorrow it gives shade to many. I don't know how far it will go, but if God wills, it will last. He nodded slowly, not answering, but in his chest, a strange peace settled. For the first time, he imagined a future not built only on his own shoulders, but on hers too. And so it began. With one veranda, one lamp, and one woman who refused to stay small, Messi's school took root. The children called it Mama Messi's class, though she laughed every time she heard it. She bought a chalkboard with her savings, and Lucy helped her paint old benches. The little compound echoed with songs and rhymes. Even passing strangers stopped to smile at the sight. Yet, behind every smile, danger still lurked. Jealous neighbors, gossiping relatives, Mike's pride waiting to snap, and a society that did not forgive women who dared to grow too tall. But Messi did not stop. Because each time she looked at Onichi and Aduri, their eyes bright, their voices bold, she knew the truth. She was not only teaching children letters. She was teaching them freedom. The day the government officials came, Messi almost fainted. She had applied weeks ago with Lucy's help, filling forms she barely understood, signing her name with trembling hands. She never expected them to actually visit. But one afternoon, a white van pulled up by the compound, and two men in neat shirts stepped out, carrying clipboards. "Good afternoon, Madam Messi," one said, adjusting his glasses. "We are here to see your class." Her knees shook. For a moment, she thought of running inside, hiding. But then she heard the voices of her pupils, A, B, C, D, F, ringing from the veranda. She straightened her wrapper, wiped her palms on it, and led them in. The officials watched as Messi guided the children through reading. They saw how she encouraged the slow learners, how she smiled when a child got it right, how she used bottle tops and sticks as counting tools. One of the men scribbled furiously on his paper. The other simply nodded, impressed. When they left, they said, "Madam Messi, you will hear from us soon. But know this, what you are doing here matters." Messi almost collapsed from relief. That evening, she told Mike what had happened. He listened quietly, sipping his beer. Then, to her surprise, he chuckled. "So government people came to my house? Because of you." She tensed, unsure whether it was mockery. But then he added, "Maybe one day I will be known as the husband of Madam Teacher." Messi blinked, stunned. Mike laughed at his own joke, but something about the way he said it felt real. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived. Messi opened it with trembling fingers. It was official recognition. Her veranda school was now part of a community learning initiative. Along with the letter came supplies, chalk, exercise books, even a small stipend to support her work. The veranda was no longer enough. By now, nearly 30 children squeezed onto the benches and mats each evening, their voices rising in chorus. Some leaned against the walls, others sat on overturned buckets. It was messy, but it was alive. Mothers came to watch, clapping when their children recited correctly. One afternoon, as Messi dismissed the class, Lucy pulled her aside. "Messi, this can't go on like this. The veranda will collapse one day. Let's find a place, even a small kiosk, where the children can gather properly." Messi hesitated. "But Lucy, money? Where will it come from?" Lucy smiled. "You've forgotten the stipend from the government program? Save it. Add what you can. I will help you with the rest." That night, Messi raised the matter with Mike. Her voice trembled, expecting his fury. But to her surprise, he only sighed. "If you're serious, there is a carpenter down the road. He can put up a wooden shed cheap. Try it." Her mouth fell open. For a moment, she thought she misheard. "You mean, you will allow me?" He smirked. "Allow? Do I look like soldier? Just don't go and disgrace me. That's all." But as he said it, his eyes softened. Deep down he was proud, though his pride would never let the words climb to his tongue. Within a month, a small wooden shed stood at the edge of the street. Its roof was patched with zinc, its walls painted sky blue with leftover paint from Lucy's brother. On the front, Messi wrote in shaky letters, "Hope Rising Learning Center." The first day they opened, the children sang under the tin roof, their voices so loud passers-by stopped to listen. Some clapped. Some sneered. By evening, the whispers began. See Messi, she now thinks she is headmistress. A woman building school? What about her husband? Wait. Pride goes before fall. Let us see how long before her husband drags her back into kitchen. The gossip spread like wildfire. Some neighbors even warned their children not to attend, claiming Messi was bewitching families with her boldness. One woman shouted in the market, "Today it is small school, tomorrow she will forget her husband and start wearing trousers." Laughter followed. The words stung, cutting deep. That night, Messi cried silently into her wrapper, afraid the gossip would drown her dream before it began. But in the morning, when she opened the shed doors, she found the children waiting. Some barefoot, some hungry, but all ready to learn. And as they shouted their morning rhymes, her tears dried. "If God sent me, who can stop me?" she thought. The backlash grew sharper when Mike's relatives returned. They stormed into the compound, voices loud. "Mike, you are no man. Your wife is disgracing our family name, closing pots to open books, teaching boys and girls like she is priest. Stop her now before people laugh at all of us." The compound froze. Neighbors gathered, waiting for Mike to roar. But he only leaned back in his chair, sipping palm wine, eyes calm. Then he said slowly, "Let them laugh. At least when they laugh, they will also know my wife is teaching children who used to wander the street. If disgrace is feeding the future, then let disgrace be mine." Gasps filled the air. Even Messi covered her mouth, stunned. His brothers cursed and stomped out, but the neighbors saw it. Mike had chosen her side. That night, for the first time since their marriage, Messi touched his arm gently and whispered, "Thank you." Mike cleared his throat, pretending to wave it off. But his chest swelled with a quiet, unfamiliar pride. From that day, Messi knew the path ahead would not be easy, but she was no longer walking alone.